Bunnag. Palawi is a partner at ILCT, a pioneering international law firm that is active in business law in Thailand. We also have Robert Lee. He is the CEO of Lee & Co., an independent advisory and investment relations firm operating in Thailand and Hong Kong. We have with us Vincent Nguyen. He's the founder and CEO of T-Box, one of the first few licensed ICO portals in Thailand and potentially a unicorn in the making. And finally, we have with us Aris Stamoulis. He's the MD of Corporate Finance at AWR Lloyd, one of the top consulting companies in Asia Pacific. Aris is joining us today from Melbourne, Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, Thailand is experiencing a digital disruption as we speak. This is very exciting for us based in this country because, we are all aware of the boom in cryptocurrencies that we have heard of globally, all these $1 million NFTs and, Bitcoin having spent a significant part of 2021 trading around $50,000 a piece. And so whether you love it or hate it, millions of users are being drawn to the world of blockchain and digital assets. The Thai SEC clearly sees a lot of potential in this space, as we can see from their proactive stance on digital assets and the speed and precision with which they are regulating asset-backed tokens and specifically real estate tokens. And that is the topic of discussion today, real estate tokenization. This webinar is brought to you by AWR Lloyd, a thought leader and enabler of prosperous transformation in Asia Pacific. My name is Ved Vyas. I'm an associate director in corporate finance at AWR Lloyd. I will be your host and the moderator for today's discussion. We are going to try and demystify real estate tokens and understand whether real estate tokenization is indeed a modern reality that we should all be aware about, or merely a pipe dream that might make some money for some people before fading away. So thanks to all of you who have joined us on this call today. We will start by asking the panelists to introduce themselves. Then we will conduct a quick audience poll to understand you guys. And finally, we will get into the discussion with our panelists that we are all here for. At the end, we will have an audience Q&A. So keep your questions ready for that. I hope all of you are as excited about what's coming up, because I certainly am very excited, because I'm sure that we will have plenty to learn from today's discussion. And who knows, some of us here might become very rich someday because of something inspirational that we learned today. So with that, I would invite our panelists to introduce themselves and their involvement with the digital assets. Hello, Vincent. Let's start with you. Do we have Vincent on the screen? Hi, we've got Palawi. We're waiting for Vincent to show up. All right, we've got Palawi and Aris already on the screen, waiting for the other speakers to come on, and then we can start with the introduction of Vincent and his company T-Box. All right, it seems like we are struggling to get Vincent on the call right now. Maybe we'll start with you, Palawi. Why don't you tell our audience about yourself and ILCT?
Hi, I'm Palawi Bunnag, or Palawi Bunnag in Thai pronunciation. I'm a partner at ILCT, or formerly known as International Legal Counsellors Thailand. We are one of the first international law firms in Thailand and established for 55 years now. We have branches in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, Taipei, and we have multiple networks with other leading law firms around the world. So we do many cross-border projects as well. We are a full-service law firm which offers legal services in almost every aspect of corporate and commercial laws, and including fintech, which is pretty much new in Thailand. And for the past 3 years, we've been working closely with the SEC fintech team in helping to design the ecosystem of the real estate ICO laws, which is pretty much based on the REIT structure and a bit of crowdfunding. So I was invited by the SEC to be one of the speakers to talk about the ICO and real estate ICO or asset-backed ICO laws. Myself, I'm specialized in corporate, commercial, real estate, and fintech laws, and corporate M&A. And I lead the capital market, corporate M&A, and fintech team. Yeah, so that's pretty much about myself. And ILCT.
Thanks. Thank you, Khun Palawi. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And we have Vincent and Robert on the line as well. Vincent, would you like to go up next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ved. And good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties there, but happy to give an introduction here. But before I even start that, I just want to give thanks first and foremost to everyone attending this panel today. I think it's really cool and really great to see all the folks tuning in and showing interest in this space. I think there's been some buzz in this area, and we're going to see some developments in this area soon. So we're happy to share sort of our visions, thoughts, and developments in this arena. But just to give a quick intro on myself, my name is Vincent Nguyen. I'm the CEO and founder of T-Box. I'm originally from the States, where I did my undergrad at Columbia and my MBA at MIT. And prior to founding T-Box and starting T-Box, I worked for over 8 years in investment banking, investment banking, capital markets, at various shops: UBS, Barclays, RBC, debt restructuring, M&A, across a variety of sectors. So, former lifetime, traditional capital markets banker, and now currently sort of a digital capital markets banker. I'm living full-time here in Thailand, have been living here for the last 4 years. And in that time, we've started T-Box, and we're committed to establishing a digital asset capital markets here in Thailand and regionally in Southeast Asia as well. So with respect to T-Box, just at a quick glance, we founded the company in 2018. So, if anyone kind of remembers the previous sort of crypto and ICO hype craze in 2017, that was when we all, like myself and a few others, got introduced to crypto. We were seeing, how much money was getting raised through, with ICOs, with just a white paper and a website, right? And we thought to ourselves, this could have enormous potential, digital asset capital markets potential in a more regulated environment. And then, sort of lo and behold, in later that year, in May 2018, the Thai government came out and announced that they'd be regulating digital assets. So we thought it was great. Why not come to Thailand and start our dream and our company here? So since then, we've been able to obtain a license from the SEC. We're proud to say that we're one of only 4 companies in the last 3 years to obtain the ICO portal license, which is essentially like an FA or investment banking license for digital assets. And we're currently in the process of potentially obtaining an exchange license as well. And last but not least, just to plug our partners a bit, we have been seed funded to this point by VCs and strategic partners. One of them is Casa Korea. They're a licensed real estate token exchange in Korea. I'll talk a little bit more about them later on. And we've also just recently closed a deal with a Silicon Valley VC. So very, very thankful to our partners helping us to launch here in Thailand. But just moving on. So our mission at T-Box, just to put some framework and context over, the main topic today, real estate tokens. So at T-Box, our mission is to make real estate accessible to all. So kind of, a generic, overly broad statement, but said another way, we really believe in a future where literally anyone at any time can invest in any real estate asset anywhere in the world, like 24/7 via mobile apps, digital channels, and digital products. We're looking to Oh, sorry, you can go back, sorry. Yeah, we're looking to use digital asset technology to empower, for example, like a Japanese retail investor to directly invest in and trade Thai real estate assets, or a Thai real estate retail investor to do the same with European assets, 24/7, all with just a few clicks on a mobile app. And on our next slide, we see our mission driven in part by some of the existing problems in the real estate capital markets. And just as a quick note, when I say capital market, or when I say market, I'm talking more about the market for larger scale whole buildings, as opposed to individual condo units, homes, etc. There's a broker market for that. We're not touching there. But in the current real estate capital markets, if we sort of look at this graphic on the page here, there are several instruments, securities that issuers can consider to raise financing, REIT, IPO, debt, etc. But in order to sort of offer these instruments to investors, you've got to go through sort of a whole layer of financial institutions, IBs, FAs, brokers, funds, etc. And what results we see is a somewhat fragmented market, which relies heavily on legacy offline channels, discussions, negotiations, etc., to ultimately connect property owners and sellers with investors and buyers. And as a due course of business, to make these channels and sales processes more efficient, these legacy channels tend to sort of naturally gravitate towards institutional investors to get deals, anchor orders and deals done. But what this does is it kind of leaves retail investors to the side. So, on our next slide, the solution here is T-Box. So at T-Box, we're looking to establish a digital asset capital markets platform accessible via our mobile application, where property owners can tokenize their buildings and list them directly, for sale to investors, and where any investor, retail, institutional, etc., can quickly invest and easily invest in these tokens, these properties, with just a small amount of capital. So, we believe our product has many advantages for both sides of the market. It creates a better and more direct access and link between sellers and buyers, and resulting in more investor participation, liquidity, and deal flow for the space overall. So this is kind of the whole idea we're pushing on, but happy to elaborate further during this webinar and panel session. And on our next slide, with this sort of solution in hand, some of the asset types and products that we're trying to push for are listed here. So we've got a pipeline of pretty exciting products that we're planning to list once we go live, and it all falls within these sort of categories of real estate. So token use cases that we like, obviously there's commercial real estate, grade A office towers, etc., which have typically been the more desirable asset among REITs here in Thailand and regionally as well. So it's an opportunity for investors to invest in prime real estate, modern buildings in CBD areas with relatively higher yields, 5 to 7% historically. So we like this use case. Another use case is IPs, warehouses, and data centers. I think this is a very interesting use case. We see a lot of e-commerce players needing a lot more infrastructure, warehouses, etc., to facilitate their order flow. We also, I don't know if folks saw recently, there was a data center REIT actually in Thailand, pretty exciting. It was a pretty good deal as well. It raised about 3 billion baht, and we see that as a good use case for tokens as well. Beyond that, getting into more further out on the horizon with COVID, etc., and market conditions, but we do see hotels and resorts as another prime area for real estate tokenization. Obviously, market conditions now make that tough, but Thailand has a good portfolio of these sort of assets, and many foreign investors are interested in investing in this space. So tokens can bring in deal flow and liquidity to that area. Down below, these are also more on the horizon type of deals, but renewable energy in Thailand and Greater Southeast Asia, there is a portfolio of solar, biomass, hydropower assets that can be candidates for tokenization. It can sort of align with a lot of ESG investment themes, and we're having a lot of good discussions here. Another use case we like is cannabis, and this is really a developing space. You know, there's a whole supply value chain here, from cultivation, manufacturing, and testing, all the way to distribution and retail. But you know, all of it is possible candidates for tokenization as well. And we've been excited to see a lot of reverse inquiry and a lot of introductory discussions in this area. And you know, last but not least, I would be remiss to leave out the hot trending topic right now, the metaverse. So you know, with the first 5 being more physical real estate tokenization candidates, we also do see sort of virtual real estate, you know, video game, virtual real estate, etc., popularized by Axie Infinity and these other sorts of platforms. But this is potentially one very exciting frontier for the asset-backed tokenization space. But you know, I definitely want to say, in case the SEC is on the call, this area is not regulated as of now, the NFT metaverse, so it's not possible to launch right now. Just make that very clear. But this is something we definitely have our eyes on. I think it could be potentially, you know, as exciting as the other physical assets we have on the page. So these are some of the use cases that we like. And just as a final slide, as a final plug, because I'm sure maybe some folks are wondering, you know, has there actually been any real success cases for this, you know, type of product globally? So in Thailand, we've yet to actually launch one of these, you know, real estate token products. They are coming though. I think the next 18 to 24 months will be very exciting for the space. But I do want to plug sort of briefly what our seed investor and partner has done in Korea. So Casa, they're a licensed real estate token platform in Korea. They launched in December 2020. Since then they've ICO'd 3 office towers in sort of the Gangnam CBD area. All deals were heavily oversubscribed, you know, closed within just 2 days or less, and you know, very, very liquidly trading in this aftermarket. I think 2 to 3 times more liquid than traditional REIT securities on the Korea Stock Exchange. So very solid use cases, and you know, they've shown a lot of flexibility with their model as well. They've tokenized entire buildings, and they've also tokenized individual floors from some prime office towers as well. So very excited for them. They've got a lot more pipeline coming in Korea, and we're also working with them very closely to prepare for our launch here in Thailand as well. So I'll leave it there, but that's just a quick intro on T-Box and what we're seeing here in the real estate token space.
Thanks, Vincent. That was very informative, and we're very excited for your journey. Best of luck with that. And with that, I'll ask Aris to give us an introduction to himself and AWR Lloyd.
Thanks, Ved, and thanks everybody for participating in this very exciting webinar this afternoon. So a very brief introduction from myself. My name is Aris Stamoulis. I'm based here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm a managing director at AWR Lloyd. We are a 21-year-old company with a center of gravity, I would say, in Bangkok, but our people span the world all the way from, you know, London in the west to Sydney down in this part of the world in the east. But as I mentioned, sort of center of gravity is around Thailand and Southeast Asia. We have completed over 500 assignments for major sort of public and private enterprises in the Indo-Pacific region, and our focus has been on strategic consulting, project advisory, M&A, and corporate finance. Last year, AWR Lloyd was ranked in the top 10 consulting firms across the Asia-Pacific region. Part of the reason is I think that we, with all the big disruptions coming, energy transition, obviously the upheaval from COVID, a lot of uncertainty around the geopolitics in the region and across the world. I think clients are coming to us and looking for fresh perspectives, innovative thinking, and on-the-ground implementation. So we focus on a number of sectors. Traditionally, we've done a lot of work in oil and gas infrastructure, and increasingly we're doing more and more work in clean technology, renewable assets, natural capital, etc. But we've also done a lot of work in real estate and smart cities. We advised one of our key clients on a smart energy supply contract for the One Bangkok smart project. This was a very interesting project because it involved sort of a centralized infrastructure system, and it also included cooling across the district, security aspects, water and energy management. There was a big database sort of sitting behind all of this, and up to 250,000 sensors that were feeding in data into this project. And this project is due to go live in 2023. But let's dive into the digital tokens and REITs. So the way that we look at it, at its base, I guess you can see the digital tokens almost being like a digital REIT, but I think it's obviously way more than that, as Vincent alluded to earlier on. From a REIT's perspective, you have sort of multiple assets sitting in that trust, and it's an active trust. There's typically a manager that's managing, the assets that go in and out of the trust. Typically, these REITs are listed on a stock exchange where investors can obviously gauge the liquidity and trade in and out. Digital tokens, of course, are similar in that respect, but they are typically passive. And part of the reason that they're passive is it is on a specific asset. So as Vincent mentioned, it's a specific building, for example, and that's how it would work. And a listing is not actually required on a stock exchange. It has its own sort of way of allowing individual investors to sort of trade in and out. We can move to the next slide. So why would asset owners be interested in tokenization? Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, it obviously opens up a new pool of investors. Number two, because it's in a trust, they can actually retain control over that specific asset. The third one is it's actually a lot quicker to set up a digital token as far as real estate is concerned. It typically takes 5 to 8 months, whereas a REIT takes a little bit longer. Overall, we've estimated that the costs are lower for digital tokens for real estate over and above REITs. REITs are typically, they cost around 8 to 10% to set up, whereas for tokens, it's in the region of 4 to 7%. And more importantly, and I think, again, this is something interesting, which is sort of beyond the traded REIT, the digital tokens allow you to create a different type of ecosystem. And as we'll see, some of the things that you can add to this are like loyalty schemes, etc. There are a number of areas that are being worked on as far as the regulations are concerned. Things like, for example, taxation. That's obviously because they look a lot and they resemble REITs. There is this push to obviously make sure that the taxation on those digital tokens, as far as real estate is concerned, mirror what's happening in the REITs world as well. And again, as far as Thailand is concerned, the SEC in Thailand is, I would argue, at the forefront of most jurisdictions to try and get these real estate assets under specific sort of regulations, so they can give a lot of comfort to investors to take up this new offering. So with that, we can move to the next slide, which is the flip side of that argument. Why would investors look at digital tokens? And I think part of the reason is it is trendy. It is hot. It's been talked about. But then there are sort of real value-added points, and again, we mentioned the low fees. I think this is inevitable. The fees, as far as managing these digital tokens, are just significantly lighter and lower than what they would be for the traditional REITs. You are making the process a lot easier as far as filling up the KYC processes. People can do it on their mobile phones, for example. Again, your mobile phone, most of the time, sort of embedded in that is your sort of individual sort of ID. The assets can remain fully transparent. Again, you can actually see the real estate asset that goes into the token. It's quite obvious what is in there. And then we mentioned things like additional sort of loyalty schemes that can be attached to these tokens. So, for example, you can imagine that somebody owns part of a real estate mall. Well, they can be notified, for example, for discounts that will be happening in that mall. So it allows the asset owners as well to gain something more than just owning that specific underlying asset. And I think that's a very exciting space because you can do with it what you will. You know, you can invent and create and distribute new products through these digital tokens. And you know, as we mentioned, Thailand is at the forefront of the digital token space, and we've seen a lot of big headlines across the board this year. The momentum and the excitement is definitely sort of gathering pace. We've seen a number of real estate offerings being launched this year in Thailand. We've seen the regulator try and get in front of a lot of these developments, and obviously they have allowed for real estate as an asset class to fit into the digital token space, and they've actually come out quite specifically and categorically saying that they won't allow for, you know, things like NFTs, at least, you know, potentially not yet. But you know, I think that'll form part of the debate that you know, we'll get into sort of in the second part of this webinar. And that's it from me. We can move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Cyrus. That was very comprehensive on the space of real estate tokens. Last but not the least, we've got Robert Lee. Robert, I believe your company has been quite active in this digital journey as well. So please do tell us about yourself and your business.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, all the guests and all the panelists. So actually, Lee & Co, we're based out of Bangkok and Hong Kong, mainly out of Bangkok, I suppose. But we've been in the Asian region for around 30 years. But our main affiliated offices are in Paris and London. London office connects us to the east and west coast of America. And what we actually do, if you just move down the slide, so what we do for the last 30 years and what we've been doing for the last 5 years, a little bit different. For the last 20 years, I was mainly in the movie business. And so we manage a lot of, I would say, influential talent. And that influential talent also works with influential brands. So we're a very small company, but what we do is we build up these relationships and we commercialize these relationships. So what I've done over the last 30 years is bring these relationships to Asia. Number one, because of for the last 15, 20 years, I think because of China's luxury growth, et cetera, wealth, et cetera. But also because there are a lot of, I would say, contemporary businesses or ideas that happen in the West eventually will come over to here. So we try to grasp onto these brand new ideas and bring them over to our private wealth, our private office families, et cetera, so they can have a little glimpse of it before they actually step in. And what we usually do is, as a private office, we are very much focused on working with just a legacy family, who's in a traditional business, looking into digital business, or it could be a large blue chip company who wants to step into the business, but is right now on the beach, just tiptoeing around, you know, wants to have a look, wants to understand the narrative first. Then what we do, we bring in the specialists, for example, like Palawi, or a legal specialist, or strategist like AWR, or an entrepreneur like Vincent. So what we do, almost mimicking what we do in the movie business, we produce and we curate projects. So recently on the gig economy, I would say that we have been recently doing some studies and also about to put together a private equity investment into the digital exchange and other, I would say, urban development and also mass infrastructure using technology and DeFi. We closely work with our Hong Kong Trade Council, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and Singapore MAS. So that's where we are right now, how we try to be a crystal ball to all these families or large institutions and do a little bit of preparation for them. And then we bring on these great specialists to develop out the projects. So what I'm going to do right now, this is a little bit more theatrical to everybody else's presentation. I would say I'm just going to show you how we would give a narrative to a private family or blue chip company who wants to be in the digital economy. Could be DeFi, could be crypto, could be REIT, could be anything. I won't specifically say, but I would say from the past, present, and future, this is how we would explain and create a narrative to a client. So if you click on.
Yeah, so it seems like, Robert, you are like a connector that's bringing all the cool talent in the space and connecting it to the right sort of capital. So before we dive into real estate tokens, which is our topic of discussion today, I just want you to give us a broader overview of what you think is happening in the world of decentralized finance, cryptos, NFTs, etc. And I think we can go through these slides that you've prepared to kind of tell that narrative.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, in my industry, I mean, we were apart from commercial, retail, etc., and now into REIT, and I would say our industry, because it's such a front play, music and movies, we were the first to disrupt it. So if you look at Napster, for example, in the 1990s, I'm sorry, but we're still from the analog age to the digital age. We've still been 30 years, we still understand. So you can see how late, it was again, like crypto or digital exchange, it was an unregulated business. But look at it now. Look how streaming business, how much more the artist can make, how much more benefit a consumer can get by subscription service. He's got millions of songs rather than 10, 20 CDs. So actually, when the regulators come on board, it actually creates a much more stable and a monetized platform. And this will happen from our industry first to the next industries, which is real estate or hard currency. Okay, so again, it's what I would say, we are at the sunset of this digital era. Okay, it's going to be very, very fast. Okay, but like any brand new landscape, there are opportunities, and the opportunity will only get better, and there'll be new asset and larger ticket classes once the regulators create stability. Right now, it's crypto natives, but in the future, you'll see institutions, blue chips who can drop down heavy tickets. But right now, we need to really, I would say, it will be the next 5 years is the rise of the regulated. Okay, so this is how exactly like how Napster is Spotify or Netflix, etc. It's exactly the same thing. So this is how we would explain it to somebody who's not in the business. And then you see who is really, I would say, taken and really being, I would say, adopted this market very quickly. Look at the music business. Look at the people who were hip hop. Hip hop was not a mainstream music, it was rock and pop. But look at them, they were the disruptors of the 90s to the millennium. But right now, they are also having their own VC funds, all right? So you could Nas, you could Eminem, et cetera, et cetera. These are the people who hit $1 billion. When was the last time you heard a 60-year-old hit $1 billion? So I would say that in the next 10 to 20 years, if you adopt it, there's also the benefit also comes down to when it comes to downstreaming it. Okay, you have the crypto natives right now who are trading. It's just this COVID period, everybody's at home, all right? But also the digital nomads as well, who don't work at home, also don't mind where they are, et cetera, et cetera. These are the people who will be the next people who want an asset class, who will actually commercialize this asset class. So when we speak to a blue chip company, they may not be aware of this, but they really want to be in this play, because if they're going to draw a path for the next 10 to 20 years of their business, it could be an oil and gas company, it could be a property development company. This is what they need to adopt. And you can see that straight away, for example, NASDAQ listing exchanges, or recently the last 2 weeks, where DBS was the first bank to receive a digital exchange license in Singapore. So when these companies, this kind of the market stabilization happens, old money becomes young. And again, one of the things about commercialization is with great wealth, there's great responsibility, where there's Getty, Vanderbilt, Rockefeller. Crypto and this digital country can be a positive thing. Look at one example, a 29-year-old who's worth $17 billion, okay? Sam Bankman is about to give away all his money. And on his exchange, he already has, I think, about $20 million into philanthropy already. So it's not just the greed of this market, but it's also the give. Another example is when we do more layers of downstreaming, you could see that Miami just embraced became the first city to be under the City Coins project, whereby they have their own Miami coin. Okay, it's not sold at the moment, but people are mining it. Already, they've generated $1 million on that currency, which then can go back into the municipal and helping, again, banks, parks, etc., etc. Now, the last thing I would say is that 150 years we've had great prosperity. Humanity's had great prosperity from many eras of industrialization, fossil fuel. But what's happened is we have just test run AI and digital. How? Look at COVID. If, firstly, we're all at home at the moment, AI created this vaccine. If we didn't have it, I think we would have that vaccine maybe 10 years in the future, because our minds are not fast enough. So again, we have two issues. Number one, how we spend, how we gain, okay? Also, we have the environmental issues. So I would say that in the next 10 to 20 hyper accelerated world, every single company needs to think about embracing technology. And my last page is this. So it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Vincent at home. You could be a farmer's daughter in the farm. You could be anybody because of this man here. So don't be afraid and embrace.
All right. Thanks so much, Robert, for getting us all very excited about this space. I guess it is already very exciting, but it's lovely to hear your inputs on this. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a segue and have an audience polls just to kind of gauge our audience and their understanding of real estate tokens. So the first poll should be up on your screen anytime now. And the idea behind this question is, how much do you know about real estate tokenization? So I guess you guys can see a form on your screen. I certainly can see it on my phone, and it says, how much do you know about real estate tokenization? Option number one, I don't know anything, tell me more. Then you have, I read or heard a little bit about tokenization, but I'm not sure. Third is, I would like to improve my understanding. Fourth, I am very excited about this space and I'm well informed. And finally, I'm an expert, I should be on the panel. So let us know your understanding about real estate tokenization. And I guess we are starting to have some responses come in. Plenty of people are suggesting they don't really know very much. We have got a few experts that would like to be on the panel, I suppose. There are a few people who are also very excited, but we've got more than 50% of our audience is saying either I don't know anything, please tell me more, or I've heard or read a little bit about this space, but I'm not entirely sure. All right, so I'd ask our panelists to bear that in mind as we go through the discussion on the panel after these polls. We should have a second poll question on your screen as well, which is talking about what are your predictions for real estate tokenization? How successful do you think real estate tokenization would be? Again, a link to a form should appear on your screens. Please take some time to answer these questions. Again, the question is, what are your predictions for real estate tokenization? Do you think digital assets will never work in Thailand? Do you think it's a novel idea, but real estate tokens will not replace REITs, which are the existing form of capital market for real estate developers? Or do you think it will offer a niche alternative marketplace? It will work for a few people, but it will not adopt a mass level scale. Or do you believe that digital assets are booming and tokens are the new thing? Or finally, do you believe that real estate tokens will transform the market and will be very successful? You're starting to have the responses come in. I guess people are quite optimistic about this space. Very few people tend to feel like it will never work. Most of our responses are down in the lower three options where people feel either. Actually, we've got a very big chunk who feels it's a niche alternative marketplace. It'll definitely be the case to begin with, but it'd be nice to get our speakers' views on what they think about our audience's predictions over here. So with that, thanks for your participation. That was a lot of fun. I hope it was fun for you guys as well. Definitely fun for us here on the panel. And with that, I will present my first question for the panel discussion to Kun Palawi. Kun Palawi, please help us understand this space a bit better. Can you help us demystify what real estate tokenization is and what are the different type of tokens that the SEC is going to make available to investors?
Okay. First of all, I would like to explain the law in a nutshell for all of you in the audience first. ICO is separate into like a normal ICO and the real estate ICO. So for the ICO, it is for like normal startups who wish to raise fund in any kind of businesses that Kun Vincent and Kun Robert were saying just now. For example, like renewable energy, cannabis, or even in the entertainment industry, fashion, movies. Those can be under the ICO. But today we're going to talk about the real estate ICO. So that's a type of asset-backed ICO, which you need, like, you know, an asset to back up on your ICO. So so it's rather different from the normal ICO. And the key players in the real estate ICO area, as you can see now, the important one is the ICO portal, which is Vincent part T-box. So everyone, all the issuers will have to go to the ICO to issue their tokens, and there will be trustee and property manager if the issuer, you know, cannot manage the property by themselves. They can hire a property manager as well, and investors. And for the first stage, there'll be, like, you know, when you have to reserve your ICO, there'll be smart contract part for if you accept cryptocurrency. But then another player is an escrow agent or the like. That's approved by the SEC, who will accept fiat money only for the reservation money. So these are, in a nutshell, these are all the players. And for the underlying assets that can be tokenized under the Digital Asset Business Decree or the current asset-backed ICO, these are the immovable property of the real estate itself, and shares in the SPV. SPV is a special purpose vehicle, which hosts the real estate, but then the passive trustee who holds this real estate will need to hold at least 75% of the total issued shares or have voting rights in that company or in that SPV. And another one is the leasehold contracts, or the right to lease the real estate. So that's like the Civic Hub one that they're doing. You know, they have the income stream from the lease contracts. So the real estate to be tokenized right now, it must not be a single condo or a single house or, you know, a single condo unit. But it must constitute at least 80% in number or investment value of the project. Or the new law, let's just pass this, not less than 500 million baht in total, which is around 16 to 17 million USD.
So you can tokenize a full condo building, but not individual condo units, or you can tokenize a luxury villa project, but not individual luxury villas, right?
No, but if the individual luxury like pool villa or beachfront villa or penthouse is, you know, in aggregate, it equivalent to more than or not less than 500 million baht. For example, in Phuket, as you can see, all the beachfront villa or all the pool villas or like bed villas, they're all worth around 100 million baht up to 200 million baht. So if like just 4 front villas equivalent to more than 500 million baht in total, then you can tokenize those.
All right.
But the reason behind this rule is that they don't allow single condo or unit houses because the Bank of Thailand, they view that if they allow a single condo unit or house to be tokenized, via the real estate-backed ICO, many developers may use this as a mechanism to dump their unsold assets in the market, and while the investors continue to bid up the price of an asset, and it might end up in causing like unsustainable value or whatever, and then may inevitably lead to an economic or asset bubble, which may burst, likely to burst. So that's what the Bank of Thailand is very concerned about. But since it's like trial and error, the SEC is willing to learn by mistakes right now. So like Siri Hub, maybe like try and error. They're very open-minded, as I've been working with them for the past 3 years since this digital asset business law came out. So I know that they're very open-minded, and they're very they accept many ideas from the issuers, and even they have a public hearing from the investors. So they're not conservative, but then in some areas they have to be conservative to protect the investors as a whole. Yeah. So so that's about it. And then the digital tokens, like the SEC, regarded as high risk product. So all the rules and laws right now, especially on the issuers as well, and even the ICO portals, they are very strict about this. So like Vincent, like for T-Box, like all the rules and laws, like the KY, as you have to pass all the, your system will have to have like KYC or connect with the service provider who can provide KYC. Right now they have the NDID, which is part of the government entity as well. And you have to do like customer due diligence on the issuers, both issuers and investors, to minimize all the risk. And all the business plan that the ICO portal, who's acting as an FA, they have to manage the risk and help come up with the prospectus or the white paper, and minimize the risk as much as possible and disclose all the risk. So this is pretty much like on the security side when you list your ordinary shares on the stock exchange market. So they're very strict about this right now. So and if I come to talk about the digital tokens, they're divided into 2 types: investment token and utility token. So but the issuer can issue both, like a hybrid one, which is a mixture of both as well. So for investment token, the investors are not like shareholders in the security law. They are just investors who are waiting for ROI, return on investment, in the form of revenue sharing or profit sharing. Like the Siri Hub one, they have like guaranteed yield on top, and on top of that they have like after 4-year time they probably sell the land, and they'll get the investors will get the profit sharing from the capital gain plan. And for utility token, this is a very interesting one, because the investors will be able to use the benefits attached to these tokens. So most likely all the hotels, the 5-star, 6-stars, or even 3-star hotels, they're very interested in tokenize their hotels, because the issuers or owners of the hotels can design in any way for the benefits to be attached to the tokens. For example, discounts to the token holder. If you buy you're interested in hotel in Phuket, because you're going to get this utility tokens, you get a discount or like free stays in particular months within the year, subject to the terms and conditions. And but then these tokens, once they're used, they'll be burned. So unlike the securities, you become the shareholders until you sell your shares, right? But and you have the right to vote and everything, But for token holders, you don't have the right to vote and you just, you are just investors exploiting or gaining the benefits attached to the token. So once used, out of the picture.
Right.
So they're not owners. It's a project kind of based kind of thing. So like you fix your project for 3 or 4 years while you're raising fund, but you have to promise your investors that you will use the fund for what particular purposes, and the benefits attached to these tokens, you have to clearly specify what you're going to give them. But then once the tokens are burned, then all go separate ways, or once the project ended, everyone goes separate way.
I see. Thanks, Kun Palawi. That's very useful, especially coming from a regulatory and legal perspective. That really sheds a lot of light on our understanding of this space. We've actually got an audience question, which I think might be relevant for you. They want to know, what is the tax framework with regards to tokenization in Thailand? Are they going to be taxed similar to REITs, or how is it going to work out?
This is the main issue that all the ICO issuers they're encountering right now. But then the Revenue Department and the SEC and some of the like potential issuers, or even the ICO portals, or even the lawyers, they are having like a closed working group to discuss about this, because the problem is, since fintech law and digital assets, they are pretty new in Thailand. It's only for 3 years now. So there's no exact definition for the digital asset to fall into. So the Revenue Department, they regard the digital asset as assets, digital assets. So they regard them as assets, not securities, not a form of fundraising, but selling the products, selling the assets. So they're different from shares, because shares, as I said, the investor will become the shareholders, they have voting rights, whereas the digital assets is a form of fundraising, but the investors will get only the revenue sharing and benefits attached to them. So they regard these as products. So once you sold the tokens, which are assets, you'll be subject to, they are like revenue, which is for the issuer, corporate income tax, definitely 20% on the net profits. And for investors, there'll be like utility token is another issue, because there'll be VAT 7%. They regard this as because utility tokens, you give products and services, to the investors. So it's like you're buying products off the shelf, and you have to pay VAT for that as well. So this is an issue. Utility tokens will be subject to 7% VAT.
Okay.
So they have to design in a way how they're going to impose the VAT, how they're going to mark up the token price to include this VAT 7% VAT thing. And if you raise like 3,000 or 3 billion baht, those are considered as revenue, not capital. So those would be subject to corporate income tax on the net profits. But then you just need to come to the tax experts and lawyers to help you design, how you're going to minimize, manage these taxes right now. But hopefully, right now the SEC, they're trying to move the investment token to the securities under the securities law because of this tax issue thing. So, and also the investment, they want it to, they want the investors who hold these tokens to have the right to vote and everything, and have the right to dividends, and not just the profit sharing or revenue sharing. So that's in 5 years' time. You don't need to think about that. But right now, all the issuers will have to and the ICO portals who's going to give advice to the issuers will have to take this into consideration, all the tax issues, because they are pretty new in Thailand, and the Revenue Department, they're not quite familiar with the digital assets. So the SEC is trying to help us on this.
All right. That's very useful, Kun Palawi. We've got some very interesting questions already building up on the team chat. We'll come to these in a bit. But once again, thank you, Kun Palawi, for giving us that perspective on how the whole legal framework is and how the taxation works, or is, the SEC is trying to make it work. Vincent, let me come to you. You are our only entrepreneur, if you will, on the group. So how are you feeling about T-Box with everything that's going on, and what's the vision that you have for tokenization through your company?
Cool. Thanks, Ved. But before I get into that question, I just wanted to follow up a little on what Kun Palawi shared.
Sure.
I think Kun Palawi did a great job summarizing all the nuance and details of real estate token regulation here in Thailand. There is, generally speaking, from the regulatory approach, there is this sort of dynamic where everything you're seeing happening now in Thailand is happening sort of under the existing digital asset framework, as digital assets are not defined as securities per se yet. There is this migration, as Kun Palawi mentioned, that will happen in 5 or 7 years. So, for the time being, we're working under this digital asset framework. And because it's new, because it's, a lot of greenfield space in the regulatory arena for them, like, yes, there's points to clarify on tax treatment. Is it going to be pari passu with REITs, etc. I would say, to follow on Kun Palawi's point, there's definitely been a lot of work in that space, to get at least pari passu treatment with REITs, if not even better. Just because, without that, obviously, a lot of this financing and token issuance space is a non-starter, right, for many investors. But I would say, here in Thailand, the discussions are ongoing, but regionally, there's been positive precedent. So in Korea, falling back to our Korean partners, they've actually gotten complete pari passu treatment with existing REITs, because kind of what happens in Korea is it's not actually the building or the trust that gets tokenized per se. An actual REIT security is issued in their structure, and it's the REIT security that's tokenized. So it wasn't a major step for the FSC and regulators in Korea to confer pari passu treatment and from a tax approach there. So there's a lot of working precedent, and a lot of parties with vested interest giving feedback here. And we're pretty confident that the RD, the SEC, etc., will help us all get to the right place to ensure this ecosystem can get off its feet. And then I want to touch quickly on the poll responses, because I thought they were very interesting. So like Ved was saying, the first poll, okay, fair enough, 36, 23, more than half are saying they're unfamiliar. But I like the second poll as well. It's, over 90% believe that real estate tokens are either the new thing or niche market will exist in some shape or form. So yeah, like, no, that's cool. But,
it's a good vote of confidence there.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, we're as an ICO portal, we're definitely open to have very, very in-depth discussions with prospective issuers, investors in the space as well. But if there's just one point I'd like to leave with folks on this call, is just really not overcomplicate the structure. So, what real estate tokens are essentially, it's very similar to a REIT, and it's that way by design. So REITs, are no bashing REITs at all, right? They've set a very stable precedent. They're a good security for securitizing real estate. They introduced the trust structure, that adds a layer of oversight and protection and transparency for investors. So there's a lot of elements real estate token regulation have taken from REITs to sort of implement the same sort of stability and protections for investors in the real estate token space. Obviously, there's tons of nuance as well with, the passive versus active trust, the deal minimums, etc. But finally, the overarching idea was to do something similar to a REIT, just something to enable real estate securitization, except now it's in the form of a token instead of a unit trust. And in terms of what Kun Palawi mentioned as well, there's going to be similar requirements in terms of issuer KYC due diligence, investor KYC due diligence. Of course, it must be this way for the integrity of the market. But I would say that the SEC and T-Box as well, we're working together on very, very, very cool, innovative ideas that will really streamline this process. I ultimately, when I foresee this product coming out to market, it's not going to be confusing at all for investors. It'll be very straightforward, and the digital asset format and platform will allow for a much more streamlined and straightforward user investment experience. So looking forward to it, but happy to discuss all the nuance and details with folks on this call offline. And yeah, I just wanted to give a simple overview. I do notice there are some very advanced questions in the chat via tax and VAT, and somebody asked about the retail investment cap institutions. Obviously, for as an early market, even though we have this theme of democratizing investment access, empowering the retail investor, that's not to say we're just not going to talk to institutional, right? So obviously, institutions will be needed to help anchor orders, etc. In Korea, their deals have typically gone 40-50% retail, with institutions anchoring the rest. So we do plan to work closely with institutional investors. You asked who would the pioneers be. We couldn't give any names even if we wanted to, but these discussions will be had, of course, to bring in institutions, educate them, and hopefully have them as supporters and anchor orders in this space as well. So
do you think, Vincent, that these guys might be the ones who are currently the key investors in the REIT space? Do you see a migration?
Yeah, that's a natural universe to start discussions with. I also think there's a lot of I guess maybe less well-known, less traditional, but still juristic asset management funds that could step into this space as well. It's a very interesting space, and that's the kind of fun part of the job, right? The order book building, the investor roadshow, and I think as we get closer to launch, we should see healthy demand from a broad spectrum of investors supporting this kind of product, as we've seen in Korea and other jurisdictions. So yeah, just wanted to kind of leave that with the audience. Don't don't overcomplicate this thing, but there's definitely, as your question sort of alluded to, there's some nuance here that's being worked out, but there's solid precedent and a lot of people working on this space to get us in a good position. And then finally back to your question specifically, like how's T-Box sort of feeling about all this? I mean, we feel very good. We're super excited about this space. I think in the next 18 to 24 months, we're going to see a lot of activity in this space, not just in Thailand, but regionally, obviously in Korea, in Japan. SBI is leading a conglomerate initiative there. In Singapore, they've already launched some platforms. You may have heard of iStocks. It's a different market over there with the accredited investor base. But I think in the next 18 to 24 months, there's going to be a lot of cool products, innovative products and platforms being launched. And it's really going to be to the benefit of issuers and investors. So it's going to be a great time to be in this space for everyone. And as for T-Box, our vision for ourselves is, to really be an early mover in this space and establish a platform to sort of empower users and investors with investment opportunities and choice in real estate. So, fitting kind of with this global trend, you've seen democratized and broad spread access being given to services like ride hailing, food delivery through super apps, social media, e-commerce. We've seen what Robinhood has done with investing in equities and crypto as well. I think you'll see a lot more of these platforms going forward that sort of, increase access, open user bases, empower users, and democratize access. And we at T-Box are excited to be, really focused on this real estate space here in Thailand and regionally in Southeast Asia. And whether or not I think, real estate tokens will be successful in the long run, I'm encouraged by the poll results. 90% of you do believe that this will exist in some shape or form, but I really do believe, there's a future for this sort of product and platform, just to the sense that, real estate has always been a relatively attractive investment class, although somewhat illiquid and less easier to access. So, any sort of product or platform that can help facilitate transactions can only help. And, we're also encouraged that there's just, again, not to tip our hat only to ourselves, there's a lot of smart teams and great teams working in this space here in Thailand and regionally as well. So, I think again, in the next 18 to 24 months, it's going to be pretty exciting. And we're not just looking at Thailand, right? So obviously, Thailand has a great portfolio of real estate assets here, a very positive regulatory framework. But if this business model works here, it can easily work in other countries that are also experiencing rapid growth, like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines. We're very excited for this space, and I think the regulatory nuance and details notwithstanding, I think this space is set to grow pretty rapidly in the next 18 to 24 months. Yeah.
Thanks, Vincent. Thanks for sharing that excitement and optimism with us, and also thanks for taking some of the audience questions as well. We will be taking this panel discussion till 3:45 p.m. I hope that's okay with our panel members, just to account for some of the technical difficulties that we had up front. So we'll be taking any further audience Q&A in about 15 minutes time as well. Aris, let me come to you. You've been an investment banker for most of your working life, and now we are seeing all of these cool, exciting things happen in the digital space. How do you see this digital revolution sort of affect the traditional economy, the traditional world of finance, and how are you kind of looking at it from a personal perspective?
Thanks, Ved. Yeah, I think, that's a fascinating question. And in answering that, again, just indulge me if you will. I'd also like to touch on a little bit about, what Vincent was saying in terms of, let's not overcomplicate things, but at the same time also be excited for what comes next. And this is how I think, we at AWR Lloyd are thinking about this, right? So let's just use an analogy, right? Imagine, and I've seen this in my lifetime because I was in investment banking for quite some time and quite some time ago as well. But imagine you are sort of in the mid-90s where everything that's traded, your securities are traded mostly on an exchange, and you need a specific type of skill set to sit on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange or the pit in Chicago and scream and shout prices and try to match make, right? And imagine somebody comes to you and says, okay, now we're going to move this whole thing to computerized trading, right? That's a big leap. So what I see happening here, it's that, but on steroids, right? Because it's not just one or two banks and the incumbent institutions that have got access to this market. You're now opening this market for everybody. And not only that, the assets that you're now offering up, right? And again, we can, let's just stick to real estate, but you can sort of start thinking about what can come next. And this is where we get excited. These assets are offering, people buy these assets not just to own them anymore, right? People are now buying assets as a form of identity, right? You're buying Bitcoin because you're expressing an identity. You're buying an ESG fund because you're expressing an identity. You're going to be buying this digital token on your phone because you're expressing a cool, hip and happening identity. You identify with that particular building, all the benefits that come off the back of that, and a whole bunch of other things, right? So it's a fun thing to do. And again, from a regulated perspective, you obviously don't want this to get completely out of hand so that the prices are crazy. But you can see where all of a sudden this is opening up a whole bunch of other pathways to create value, to release creativity into a marketplace. And you put out a product out there, and you can see whether people like it or not. So it's also a great way to sort of provide for a testing ground to innovate. In the past, and I think this is important, in the past, you had segregated industries. So a bank did banking type of work, right? Mm-hmm. A real estate company did real estate type of work. An advertising company did advertising. I think more and more, you need to be a company that's very close to the cutting edge of all of these new technologies. So as far as AWR Lloyd is concerned, again, this is what we're excited about. We're excited to teaming up with somebody like Vincent. And again, I certainly think Vincent is unique in the sense that he brings both a technology element to it, but he also has a really strong understanding of markets. Now, sometimes that's a very scarce sort of complementary skill set to have, because he can understand how you take this thing, how do you monetize it? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're looking to do. You're looking to monetize that creativity, right? And if you've got that technology coming from the other side, well, then you can marry those two ideas. You push it out into the internet, and you just don't know what's going to come out of it, right? Just one last point I want to make about this platform that we have, the internet, and getting out there, right? Robert mentioned how Miami is at the forefront of digital technology and the rest of it. And it's very interesting because the mayor of Miami, and this is part of the reason why they were so successful, and they're building an entirely new ecosystem in Miami. And part of the reason is that the Miami mayor, Francis Suarez, actually went out to the market on Twitter, and he said he just said, how can I help make Miami a more sort of technologically forward-thinking place? And people started responding to him, and he took them up on that, right? So all of a sudden you've got this ecosystem that's like fast charged, developing sort of new products, etc., sitting right there in Miami, which is not traditionally where Silicon Valley sits. Silicon Valley sits on the other side, of the United States. Now all of a sudden you're creating this new ecosystem that's happening in Miami outside of Silicon Valley. So what I'm saying is we still are thinking about things in a centralized sort of marketplace. Digital tokens are sort of step one to really sort of spreading out both the product on the one side, but also where the marketplace actually happens. It can happen on your phone, right? That's the reality. So we are obviously super excited about that.
So you feel that it's not just going to change the economics and the finance, it's going to be changing perhaps the way we live our lives moving forward, right? And Vincent,
I'd just like to add too, to something that Aris mentioned about the investing for your identity. I really love that you brought up that point, just because obviously for myself, coming from a more traditional capital markets background, when I think about how to roadshow and market these tokens and products, we're talking price, we're talking yield, we're talking tenants, rents, return, location, etc. All the classic KPIs and measuring sticks. But really, like as Aris touched upon, what we've seen with the current generation of investors, whether you think it's right or wrong, meme stock investing, etc., expressing yourselves through owning crypto, owning NFTs, etc. This is a real thing, and this is part of a shift we're seeing in sort of investor investment theory, if you will. So I really like that where we can sort of capture this as well. With real estate tokens, but with asset-backed tokens in general. I think this is a topic that's not really largely discussed, and naturally so. There's just not a lot of precedent out there. But I think this is a very important aspect of digital asset capital markets that can add value for users and can become of great importance later on. So we're watching that closely and definitely aligned with Aris and his thinking in that regard. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Good luck with all of that, Vincent. And Aris, I just want to inform you on the chat here, we've got competition from Uanta Securities, who also want to partner up with T-Box. So, good job, Vincent. I guess you are convincing people in the market right now. Let me come to Robert. Robert, what would be your number one advice for entrepreneurs in Thailand, for people like Vincent and other entrepreneurs? And do you think we have the right sort of startup ecosystem in this country?
Thanks. I think just gathering all the information today from Aris as a banker, Palawi as a legal, and Vincent as an entrepreneur. Let's look at Thailand right now as rather much of a trailblazer, being a first mover in regulating this space. But when you look at it, it's not a global capital market. It's not New York. It's not Tokyo. It's not London. It's Hong Kong. But we are right now having a lot of attention focused on us. Why? Because I think because of the regulator and also the public adoption, and also that, as you said, why pick Thailand? We have a great blockchain community. We have a great generation who are going to build out these great systems and products and assets, whether it's a stable coin or a utility coin. So for the regulator to be thinking forward actually helps the greater community and recover. Globally, we're on a pause right now, okay? But if you look at how a country can recover its wealth, whether it's a Venezuela because of its currency crash, or Thailand because it's very much based on an export economy and hospitality economy, you can open yourself up by using these decentralized assets, okay? And this fractional ownership of whether it's traditionally it's a timeshare or it's buying a jet off NetJet fractionally. But right now, again, as Palawi says, a hotel can actually sell rooms from somebody in Scandinavia without having a broker in the middle. So how great is that we can embrace it? But what we would say to any investor is always remember how we can downstream it, because not everybody wants the volatility of trading Bitcoin, right? You're going to see right now, for example, in the next 2 to 3 years, Germany has just passed a law whereby a fund manager and asset manager can now invest 20% of their funds into digital assets. Now, they may not go into Bitcoin, but they may actually want to buy a REIT, for example, because it's much more stable. It could be a pension fund, etc. So what Thailand's forefront thinking, you're going to see a lot of international liquidity coming not from the traditional markets and fiat currency, but actually from this new digital currency, either from the institutions, and because regulators have created this great space, or the crypto native or this digital nomad who doesn't believe in fiat, or doesn't want the cost of fiat, or doesn't want the speed of fiat. So gathering from everybody, whether it's a real estate, an STO, or it's a utility token, I think that we will see a generation in the next 5 years of more and more credible assets. And it's up to you as a consumer where you want to enter. So I think that Thailand if you look at Southeast Asia, in the next 10 years, it's been a very strong play. And luckily, we have a very young community, a very young, strong, creative. I would say Thailand is one of the most creative countries in Southeast Asia, again, with their neighbors like in Vietnam, that we can create this new kind of like digital corridor and improve the next generation's, I will say, aspirations and empowerment.
Right. But if we compare Thailand to, say, the likes of Indonesia, Vietnam, even recently, we are not really seeing that many unicorns come out of this country. I mean, maybe we're not comparing apples to apples over there, but what do you think can be done to produce more homegrown unicorns here?
I think the regulation has helped. Because you're going to see CVCs and institutions, not just VCs, but corporate VCs. Mm-hmm. You may be seeing, you're already seeing SoftBank dropping a little bit of money into Thailand. We have a client right now who just put a little bit of money, all right? This is SoftBank. So I think Thailand, we have the strategic play. We're in the middle. But then you look at Indonesia and Malaysia, they have the volume of population, right? So yep. It's a little bit different play when you're looking at investing in the country. But Thailand has always been, whether you're Indonesia, Malaysia, Singaporean, CLNB, we've always been creative. That is the heart of Thailand. So when it's institutional or manpower or the markets, I think that Thailand has that thing and it will never be able to be replicated that easily.
Right. All right. Thanks so much for that, Robert. Kun Palawi, let me come to you again. And I wanted to understand from you, what sort of investors do you see engaging in this space early on? Will there be some sort of delineation between retail and high net worth individuals or family offices or institutional investors? And what's being done there to protect the retail investors? Because, we're talking about a fairly new capital marketplace over here. So what will be done to protect the interest of the less sophisticated investors?
Yeah, right now under the current law, there are retail investors. Let me classify institutional investors. Those are like commercial banks or funds or insurance companies. Ultra high net worth. Not just high net worth investors, but ultra high. So, like for example, a juristic person or a company, they have to have like shareholders' equity of at least a certain amount, like 200 million baht. things like that. And for individuals, they have to have net assets of at least like 70 million baht or investment of more than 25 million baht. So those are ultra high net worths. Since, as I said, the SEC views digital assets or the tokens as high risk product. So the high net worth is not enough to have to be ultra high net worth. And then another type is retail investors. So in order to protect the retail investors right now, but in the primary market, the retail investors can purchase up to maximums of 300,000 baht only. But the strange thing is that that's for the primary market, but for the secondary market or exchange, there's no limit for that. So it's like they will help, regulate or lower the risk for the retail investors in the primary market only first. But then in the secondary market exchange, they can just trade how much ever they want. But then for the real estate ICO, the good thing is that the low to medium income earners, they'll be able to invest and gain benefits from, the 5 to 6 star real estate or hotels. So not unlike the securities, you have lots that you have to buy. Otherwise, you won't be able to buy the securities. So it'd be like allocated lots. But then, so in order to protect these investors, not just retail investors, but all investors, first of all, it goes up to the ICO portal first. They have to design, the business plan and the risk management, disclosures and everything, exactly like the securities law. When you're going to list a public company limited on the stock exchange or the MAI. So all of these will have to be disclosed in the prospectus or white paper, as you called it. And you have to keep disclosing all the risks continuously as well. There'll be reporting requirements, filing requirements, even the financial statements you have to file to the SEC after you have tokenized all your assets. The ICO portal will have responsibility in looking after the issuers for at least like 1 year, but they can in the contract they can even stipulate more than that. But at least right now it's at least 1 year. But personally, I think they should look after the issuers too, the projects. So yeah, and then so that's about it. But then right now, the laws, the SEC, they keep issuing new laws all the time just to protect the investors. First of all, to protect the investors. And since this is new in Thailand, they don't want the investors to have they although they are promoting the digital assets or the fintech thing, but at the same time they have to protect the investors as a whole. So the issuers will have all the responsibilities and liabilities. When they raise fund, they have to do everything in accordance with what they disclose in the prospectus or the white paper. Otherwise, the ICO portal will, monitor them as well as the SEC. And there's an anti-money laundering office that the issuers have to report through the ICO portal, things like that. The ICO portal will also have to monitor the investors, even the exchange as well, and or the dealer or the broker, whatever license you have. You have the responsibility and liabilities and duties to monitor all your investors, to be subject to the anti-money laundering laws. So all these are just to protect the investors as a whole.
Right. So, we have compared real estate tokens several times on today's call with REITs, just that, they're happening on blockchain. It's a new technology. It's on a distributed ledger. But in terms of investor protection, you feel, Kun Palawi, that everything's being done to kind of provide the same sort of protection that people would be getting investing in a REIT on the stock exchange of Thailand, for example?
Yeah, you get the same protections. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think even more protection.
Okay.
Because as I said, fintech is very new to Thailand, and all the many digital assets coming out, even the cryptocurrency. So the SEC is monitoring that. So all investors will have to check the SEC website. There's a special page that they list out all the the blacklisted tokens, or the websites or the portals or even the issuers that doing against the laws or without a license. So when before the investors decide to invest, they have to check whether this particular person or entity is reliable first, or whether they have a license to issue these tokens.
All right. Great. Thanks a lot, Kun Palawi. I might also request you to answer one of the questions that we have received from the audience, who would like to know, is there a material difference between the transaction fees between REITs and tokens? Like, is there any incentive for issuers to move towards doing tokens instead of REIT? We've talked about the tax implications, but is there anything in terms of the transaction fees that would be different?
Transaction fees is not for the lawyer to answer. It's for the ICO portal, and they have the fees imposed on that. So Vincent can.
Yeah, sure. No, fair enough. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to put any numbers out on this call, but what I would say is we're definitely looking to be competitive versus REITs. So we know we need to add value. We're looking to add value to issuers. So but issuers should certainly keep REIT IPOs in their finance toolkit, debt financing their finance toolkit, and tokens can be another consideration as well. And for the fees, we can discuss and negotiate case by case, but we are looking to be competitive versus other finance options. So.
Yeah, Vincent, but is there something fundamental about the blockchain technology that's being used that might make the administration of these trusts more cost effective on blockchain as opposed to how they were done previously on REITs?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and honestly, probably better for another panel session. But because I'm sure at least some people have heard how with blockchain and smart contracts, processes, etc., can be automated. But and it's a great mission to strive towards, and automation, lower overhead is always better. But there's a reason a lot of the manual processes are in place. Well, and I'm talking about like custodian, registrar, settlement, and things like that. So in terms of where our focus is, like adding value and stuff, we're not pitching and promoting this as some kind of blockchain smart contract solution that will like do away with your back office and save you. It's more on like the capital markets and connecting investors side that we're focused on. I think that whole discussion about smart contracts, replacing trustees. Some people are going as far as saying, replacing central banks, etc. I think we're a long ways away from that sort of precedent happening. So yeah, our value discussion is centered mainly around like the pricing, the investor access, etc. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about T-Box again. What is it that makes T-Box special in what you guys are trying to do? And why must somebody go to a T-Box as opposed to some of the other players in the market?
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to plug myself here. But no, honestly, like we don't consider ourselves super special versus anybody else. I don't think we're doing anything like super wildly different from what some of our peers are doing. What I would say on our behalf is that our whole team from our team, our staff, our developers, our legal partners, our investors are all big believers in this space. So, we're all fully committed and dedicated to delivering this platform and delivering a product that adds value, makes sense, is easy and streamlined for all players. So on our behalf, we're big believers, and we're working hard on this. And definitely, what I do want a chance here to plug the SEC if they're on. But honestly, I think what has helped everyone come to this point is the SEC in Thailand. Opinions may vary on how to deal with the SEC, but with respect to digital assets, I do believe the SEC has done a phenomenal job. Clint Palawi hinted on this earlier, of getting the regulations to this point. Thailand is honestly at the forefront of digital asset regulation in Southeast Asia, ahead of Singapore in many regards. And they've got a pretty young and dynamic team working there. I know almost all of them, and they're very open-minded. They're very open to ideas, and they want this platform and ecosystem to work just as much as we do. So I think there's a lot of people involved in making this success, and we're just happy to be a part of this. And in terms of how we plan to differentiate ourselves, though, and stand out, I can't say too much at this point, but our whole strategy revolves around our products and our user experience. So, our tech team has developed a really, really, really cool mobile app for users. It's got a lot of features, honestly, some features that have never been before seen in sort of this trading and token context. And, we're really looking forward to launching that and sharing that with the market when we're ready to go public. And then on the product side, we have I kind of alluded to the use cases that we like on the real estate token side, but for products specifically, we've got a very exciting lineup and of products to bring to market in the real estate token space that I think investors will like and will offer very unique value opportunities, investment opportunities, etc. for our users. So again, sorry, can't reveal too much on this call, but I think in the coming months, you'll get to see some really cool features and products in this space that'll be exciting and helpful for everybody. Yeah.
All right. Looking forward, Vincent.
Thank
We
you.
are drawing into the final 10 minutes of our discussion today, so I'd remind our audience to just send through any other questions that you might have for our panelists. Aris, maybe I'd like you to tackle one of the questions that we received there from the audience, where there is some concern about substandard assets being tokenized. That's clearly a very real market risk. And what do you think is going to be done or could be done to make sure that, because that really impacts the reputation of this new and budding market as well. So how do you kind of tackle that situation, and what might be some potential solutions?
Thanks, Ved, and that again is a very relevant question to ask. I think again it goes to this point of the regulators in any country, by the way, are faced with this challenge, right? The technology is there now, so you can either try and close your eyes and think that it may go away, or you can try and get in ahead of it. The reality is it's always difficult to do that. Again, you make the assumption that innovation will always happen ahead of regulations, right? But I think what the SEC has done, and again, perhaps this is a plug for them as well, is they've managed to go down the track quite quickly. And again, I personally don't think it's any coincidence that they've gone with real estate tokenization as the first asset class. Why is that? Because again, traditionally in Asia, real estate has been, that one way where people can invest sort of even through generations and build up wealth. It's something tangible. It's something that you can see. You can actually see the building going up. You can actually see that the building is there. So it's an understandable asset class, and I think it's an understandable asset class for the retail investors. So I think it's quite obvious why they've gone that as in terms of the first step. And like anything else, what you're trying to do as a regulator is, first and foremost, you are trying to protect the retail investor, right? Because it's the perception of sort of, let's just say, a low sophistication level. But it's also, I think it's important that you protect the little guy. And again, whatever your political system is, you want to protect the little guy. You want to make sure that the little guy, is not hoodwinked, right? So, that's the first thing you're trying to do. Secondly, you're trying to put in place a system that has got the necessary protections on the one hand, but on the other hand, still allows for that innovation to happen on the margins, right? So, you know, where initially maybe it's the sophisticated investors that take up the product offering first, and then slowly it trickles down to you know, the rest of retail investors. It is obviously going to be a lot more challenging with digital assets because, as I mentioned before, you're not dealing with one marketplace, you're dealing with multiple marketplaces that can be pretty much anywhere, right? But to the extent that the SEC stands up there and says, this one has got our stamp of approval, so if you guys trade through that, guess what? We can tell you we've taken it through a process where we've given it the certification with our stamp of approval, so that's regulated. You can go and trade NFTs, and that's fine. But if you lose your money, essentially don't come crying to us. I think that's kind of the approach. And I think again that is quite pragmatic. I think the SEC has realized, like I said, the technology is there. You can choose to ignore it, or you can try and do something about it. I've seen an interesting question as far as, you know, valuations. It's always going to be difficult, right? It's like, how do you value an asset class? How do you know, there are many ways. Obviously, free cash flows, discounting, you know, all of that. But again, we have seen some NFTs. You know, some of the pricing on these NFTs, and it has been. I mean, personally, I wouldn't invest in it. But then again, I'm not a Bitcoin billionaire, right? So if I was a Bitcoin billionaire, maybe I would think about things a little bit differently, right? So it also depends on where you are, where you are sitting, what your wealth is, and what asset class you're looking sort of to invest in, and the rationale behind it. Again, as I said, importantly, it is about identity, and now more so than at any other time in history, as far as, you know, owning an asset, whether it's physical or in this case digital is concerned. And that's the important thing. Don't forget that. Again, you own gold because you want to express a certain type of identity. You own crypto for the same reason. You own an ESG asset for that reason as well, right? So I think that's the important thing. Don't leave that subjective element to valuation out. I think it's important that we keep that in mind as well. But on the flip side, you know, any regulator wants to make sure that, you know, the market is stable, it's transparent, it's credible. Otherwise, the whole thing could fly apart.
All right, thanks for that, Aris. I guess the question of valuation also comes about because, and I think to an extent it's true of almost all global markets, where we've seen in the last few years a lot of fixed income investors, you know, who would typically look at REITs as fixed income, have migrated away into safer stocks and equities, whereas a lot of the REITs investment have been traded like stocks because, you know, we've been in a fluctuating interest rate environment, to put it mildly, and I think they've wanted to trade them for capital appreciation as opposed to the yield. So maybe that's one of the reasons why that sort of a question comes up. It's quite topical, especially with what we've seen of Thai REITs skyrocketing in 2019 and then coming crashing down, and to see where they still are post whatever impacts that we've seen of the pandemic. And I think it would be important to keep those considerations because the timing is quite important for what's happening in this digital asset space as well. Robert, let me come to you and just ask you to share with the audience. You know, you started off by giving us a broader perspective on this world of decentralized finance and all the cool things that are happening. I just want your parting thoughts on you know, whatever we have discussed today, and then maybe we'll ask the rest of our panel members to join in and share with the audience their final few thoughts before we close today's event.
Sure. I think on my closing note, let's look at a real-time example how regulator and the SEC has been very successful and the fruition has come up. Look at today's crypto market in Thailand. By the end of the year, it's going to hit 1 trillion Thai baht. That's $30+ billion. Now, the important thing here is where does the fruition come because of this regulation? Big Cup is going to pay 1 billion Thai baht into the taxes. So in other words, the country has now received cash from trading, and it's not gone offshore. And where does that tax go? It goes to the country. That's very important that the regulator put something in place many years ago in 2018, and now it's seeing the fruition. So now you have the second phase of the stablecoin utility, for example, Vincent and Palawi, this next generation. Now we are about to do what we do, the third layer, very exotic, called an NFT. We are now doing a prep study for a Thai company, okay, because of our London and Paris, and as you said, Beppo doing the $69 billion, etc. Now, what I told them is, let us not look at it as an art piece, as a trading tool, but look at it, layer it back, tear it to pieces, and see how that can be used, and basically using it and almost like a utility experience and helping cities like Samut or Phuket or hotel industries, okay, which basically can use NFT. They can't use the currency, but they can use NFT. And so we are doing a little bit of prep work right now, which is a third layer. Okay, the first layer is the coin. The second layer is this great stable and utility. But I think in Thailand, we can also look at what happening in the West and bring in this new exotic class, but tearing it down and localizing it. And then that will be able to regenerate and reboot the economy. One last example, take this young student, Thai student, doing an NFT, not sold in Thailand. She started to sell her NFTs. Now we're in a poor situation. There's no income for anybody right now, especially for a student. She started to sell her NFTs at 0.5 Ethereum. Today, she's selling her NFT for 30 Ethereum. She can look after her family, her grandparents, etc., and she hasn't graduated yet. And that is because my last note, as I said, Thailand has great creativity and a great government to support that creativity, and wealth will come back and empower the country.
Lovely message, Robert. Actually, that might be where we have to end the panel discussion. It's 3:45. Please let me thank everybody who's joined in today. Thanks for sending through some very interesting and very engaging questions, which really made us think and got us some really good comments from our panel experts. Thanks to all of the panel experts today for giving us their time. Thank you, Robert. Thanks, Kun Palawi. Thanks, Aris. Thanks, Vincent. Thank you all for your time. And goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.